From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, this is Dateline Malacañang and here are the news. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. expressed his commitment to charting a path toward inclusivity and sustainability to help build a future-proof association of Southeast Asian nations or ASEAN. In a video message upon his return to Manila, President Marcos affirmed the Philippines' readiness to host the ASEAN Summit and related summits in 2026 with a theme, Navigate Our Future Together. President Marcos said this year's ASEAN Summit served as a platform for Southeast Asian leaders to discuss geopolitical and economic challenges and explore ways to steer the regional bloc's future as they address the issues domestically, bilaterally, regionally, and globally. He said pressing issues such as the recent incidents in the West Philippine Sea and the current situation of Myanmar were raised during the summit. He also described Timor-Leste's full accession as the 11th member of the regional bloc as a historic step that reaffirms ASEAN's commitment to unity and inclusivity. President Marcos noted that upgrades in the ASEAN Trade and Goods Agreement amendments to free trade agreements and utilization of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership will enhance transparency, stability, and predictability, boosting business confidence and sustaining ASEAN's role as a driver of regional and global growth. He reaffirmed the Philippines' commitment to strengthening partnerships with countries that share values and commitment to peace, stability, and economic progress.
The leaders and I spoke about future-proofing our region through economic cooperation and sustainable growth. As the 2026 chair of ASEAN, the Philippines looks forward to building on the gains of Malaysia's inclusivity and sustainability theme and carry ASEAN forward as is our theme, navigate our future together. We remain committed to pursuing initiatives that will support Timor-Leste's capacity to assume its obligations as a full member of ASEAN, with the end goal of further building a people-centered ASEAN. This economic development goes hand in hand with strengthening the socio-cultural community. We discussed the progress achieved and the actions moving forward for the environment, climate change, education, green jobs, and health.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. reaffirmed his commitment to advancing the Philippines' bilateral relations with foreign partners such as the United States and the United Nations. President Marcos said he seized the opportunity to raise the Philippines' intent to expand areas of cooperation with its partner countries during his participation in and on the sidelines of the 47th Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Summit, and related summits in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. In his arrival message, President Marcos said that he met with his counterparts from the US, Japan, India, China, South Korea, the UN, New Zealand, and Australia during the summit. On the sidelines of the summit, President Marcos met with the leaders of Cambodia, Canada, Thailand, Japan, the European Union, Vietnam, Australia, New Zealand, as well as with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. President Marcos said they discussed ways to further strengthen partnerships and expand cooperation in strategic areas including trade, defense, maritime security, and agriculture. President Marcos also expressed gratitude for the support extended to the Philippines in its ASEAN chairship in 2026.
I highlighted the progress of our dialogue partnerships and how we envision the way forward together. We reaffirmed our commitment to deepen bilateral relations and discussed cooperation on many fields of mutual interest, fields such as security and defense, maritime, climate action, trade, investment, agriculture, and people-to-people relations.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang confirmed that the Philippines was not excluded from the U.S.'s recent 0% tariff concessions for Southeast Asian countries. However, the government chose not to fully open up crucial local sectors to global competition. According to a statement issued by Palace Press Officer Claire Castro, Special Assistant to the President for Investment and Economic Affairs Frederick Go said that the Marcos government prioritized food security and local farmers above quick market liberalization. She highlighted that just 2 ASEAN countries gained favorable tariff treatment for committing to open all of their markets to U.S. food, agricultural, and industrial exports. The palace said the statement was after the remarks from the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which expressed dissatisfaction that Manila received no tariff cuts despite being one of Washington's closest partners in Southeast Asia. U.S. President Donald Trump reportedly accepted a 0% tax policy for certain commodities from Malaysia, Cambodia, and Thailand at the just concluded ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Trump earlier declared severe tariffs on virtually all items imported from nearly all nations, including the Philippines, which was due to incur a 20% levy, 3 percentage points higher than the 17% initially anticipated for Manila. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. met with Trump in the United States in July and successfully reduced the rate to 19% beginning in August.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. reaffirmed the Philippines' resolve to defend its sovereignty in the West Philippine Sea or WPS firmly but calmly amid renewed tensions with China over disputed waters. President Marcos also emphasized strengthening ties with like-minded nations to advance regional stability and economic cooperation.
I reaffirm that the Philippines will continue to remain firm, calm, and resolute in defending our sovereignty, our sovereign rights, and jurisdiction in the West Philippine Sea, in accordance with, of course, international law. We will continue to strengthen our partnerships with all countries who share our values and our commitment to peace, to stability, and to economic progress.
ASEAN leaders tackled the political crisis in Myanmar, with President Marcos reiterating the bloc's support for the implementation of the 5-point consensus to bring about a peaceful and lasting solution. During the summit, President Marcos repeatedly raised the tensions and coercive actions in the WPS, urging his fellow leaders to step up maritime cooperation. President Marcos officially received the Philippines' chairship of the 2026 ASEAN Summit. The president, in his acceptance speech before ASEAN leaders, vowed to steer the bloc toward a stable and secure regional order. He said Manila's leadership would prioritize peace, security, and cooperation under the theme, Navigating Our Future Together. He said the Philippines would continue to champion peace and stability through dialogue, adherence to international law, and enhanced cooperation on traditional and non-traditional security issues. He reiterated ASEAN's commitment to an open and rules-based regional architecture.
Our chairship arrives at a defining moment for ASEAN, one marked by both promise and complexity. For though the tides of change may be unpredictable, our compass must remain constant, anchored in cooperation. It must be oriented toward maintaining a stable and secure region, built upon a shared vision of an open, inclusive, transparent, and rules-based ASEAN regional architecture.
Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has signed Republic Act or RA 12312, institutionalizing the ban on Philippine offshore gaming operators or POGOs and declaring their operations and other related activities illegal. RA 12312 or the Anti-POGO Act of 2025 signed by President Marcos on October 23 repeals RA 11590, which previously legalized offshore gaming operations. RA 12312 prohibits the establishment, operation, or conduct of offshore gaming in the Philippines, the acceptance of any form of betting for offshore gaming operations, acting as a POGO gaming content or service provider, the creation and operation of a POGO hub, and the introduction, use, or possession of POGO gaming equipment or paraphernalia. Law orders the permanent cancellation of licenses previously issued for POGO operations. All alien employment permits and certificates of exemption and exclusion issued by the Department of Labor and Employment or DOLE, as well as any visa or work permit issued by the Bureau of Immigration or BI or other visa issuing agencies to POGO workers have also been revoked. Under RA 12312, all POGOs as well as POGO gaming content providers, accredited service providers, and local gaming agents whose licenses have been revoked remain liable for taxes, duties, regulatory fees, and all other charges up to the last day of their operations. These are due and payable to the government for obligations arising from or in connection with their operations. The Bureau of Internal Revenue or BIR is directed to audit persons and entities to determine any outstanding tax liabilities despite the revocation of licenses and closure of operations. The POGO local gaming agent will continue to act as the authorized representative for the payment of taxes resulting from the BIR audit. The law directs the DOLE to formulate and implement transition plans, programs, and activities for affected Filipinos previously employed in the POGO industry. DOLE is instructed to coordinate with the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, the Department of Information and Communications Technology or DICT, the Department of Trade and Industry DTI, and the Commission on Higher Education or CHED for the training, retooling, skills development, and transition of affected Filipino workers to quality employment. RA 12312 also establishes the Administrative Oversight Committee to be chaired by the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission or its organizational successor in interest to ensure the proper and effective implementation of the ban. Other members of the committee include the DICT, the Department of Justice, and the Department of the Interior and Local Government. The AOC is mandated to submit a compliance monitoring report to the Office of the President, the Senate, and the House of Representatives not later than 1 year after the law's effectivity. Violators of the law face imprisonment of up to 8 years and a fine of up to 15 million pesos for the first offense, up to 10 years in prison and a fine of 30 million pesos for the second offense, and up to 12 years in prison and a fine of up to 50 million pesos for the third offense. If the offender is a public official or employee, the maximum penalty applicable will be imposed. If the guilty offender is a foreign national, he or she will be summarily deported after serving the sentence and permanently barred from re-entering the Philippines. RA 12312, which was made public, takes effect 15 days after its publication in the Official Gazette or in a newspaper of general circulation. Meanwhile, Senator Risa Hontiveros lauded its passage, saying it is a long overdue correction to what she described as a policy mistake that allowed POGOs to exploit people and institutions. Hontiveros, who led Senate inquiries that exposed trafficking, prostitution, and scams linked to POGOs, including the alleged scam hubs associated with former Bamban Mayor Alice Guo, thanked law enforcement agencies, whistleblowers, and trafficking survivors for helping uncover the industry's abuses.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has signed into law a measure institutionalizing the Lifelong Learning Development Framework, or LLDF, in a bid to promote universal literacy and improve access to quality education. Under Republic Act or RA 12313 signed by President Marcos on October 23, the LLDF will serve as a blueprint for advancing, for developing, and promoting lifelong learning programs across cities, municipalities, villages, and learning providers. The law provides that the LLDF must promote functional literacy at all levels of society and inclusive learning in the educational system, as well as revitalize learning in families and communities. The framework must also facilitate learning for and in the workplace, extend the use of modern learning technologies, enhance the quality of learning, and foster a culture of learning throughout life. RA 12313 establishes intersectoral coordination mechanisms to involve governmental and non-governmental organizations and the private sector in building learning cities, municipalities, or villages to encourage and boost resource mobilization and utilization. The new law also includes the secretaries of the Department of the Interior and Local Government and the Department of Trade and Industry as additional members of the Philippine Qualifications Framework, National Coordinating Council or PQF-NCC. The PQF-NCC's mandate has also been expanded, authorizing it to formulate, implement, review, and amend the LLDF, formulate a master plan on the promotion of lifelong learning, and monitor and evaluate the master plan and work with the local government units or LGUs on its mandatory implementation. The Council must also include in its annual report to the Office of the President, the Senate of the Philippines, and the House of Representatives its progress and accomplishments in relation to the LLDF. Within 6 months from the effectivity of RA 12313, the PQF-NCC is directed to formulate a national master plan to promote lifelong learning that aligns with and supports the objectives and priorities of the Philippine Development Plan. RA 12313 instructs heads of LGUs designated as learning cities, municipalities, or villages to guide and support activities for the promotion of lifelong learning, whether initiated by them or by a lifelong learning provider. The heads of learning providers offering lifelong learning are mandated to submit an annual report to the appropriate government agency, which has jurisdiction over them, detailing the programs offered, number of attendees, and other relevant data necessary to assess the success of the lifelong learning program. A copy of RA 12313 was made public on Wednesday. Meanwhile, Senator Joel Villanueva said the law would enable local government units to establish learning cities and learning municipalities that promote continuous education and skills upgrading for Filipinos. Villanueva, principal author and sponsor of the measure, said the law fosters a culture of lifelong learning by allowing communities to create customized educational programs that respond to local workforce and technological needs. He thanked President Marcos for signing the measure, noting that it fulfills his longtime advocacy to make education a continuous process.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has approved the Tatak Pinoy Strategy or TPS, a national plan aimed at strengthening Philippine industries, expanding domestic production, and increasing the global competitiveness of Filipino goods and services. President Marcos issued Memorandum Circular Number 104, which urged national government institutions, government-owned or controlled corporations, and local government units to facilitate the TPS's implementation. The Tatak Pinoy Council, directed by the Department of Trade and Industry or DTI, devised the strategy after consulting with the private sector, research institutes, and other important players. The circular builds on Republic Act Number 11981, often known as the Tatak Pinoy or Proudly Filipino Act, which aims to stimulate, support, and promote the production and distribution of diversified, sophisticated, and globally competitive Philippine-made products and services. According to the DTI, the Tatak Pinoy strategy was developed through an inclusive and evidence-based approach to increase and diversify local firms' productive capacities, allowing them to move up to the value chain and compete globally. To guarantee seamless implementation, the TP Council will propose action plans at the national, provincial, city, and municipal levels for approval by the President. According to the circular, the DTI, in collaboration with the Presidential Communications Office, will distribute the official copy of the plan to all relevant government departments and make it publicly available via the DTI's official website and other channels.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other government agency news, the government through the Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, met with flood control experts from the academe to discuss measures to combat the flood problem and the management of water resources. According to Secretary Vince Dizon, the meeting, which was held at the DPWH main office in Port Area, Manila, was set in connection with the order of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. to immediately find a long-term solution to the issue of flooding in the country. He said the DPWH will conduct broader coordination with experts and other agencies to develop a science-based flood control plan. Among those in attendance were Dr. Alfredo Mahar Francisco Lagmay, Director of the University of the Philippines UP Nationwide Operational Assessment of Hazards, or NOAA Center, Dr. Guillermo Tabios III of the UP Institute of Civil Engineering, and DENR Undersecretary Carlo Primo David. At the same time, Dizon noted that they would also want to assist in water resources management. With this, the DPWH chief said they would like to invite to their next meeting the head of the National Irrigation Administration, or NIA, to the agency's role in the management of water resources.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, intensified its price monitoring activities to ensure that undas-related goods remain affordable and adequately supplied for consumers. DTI Secretary Cristina Roque led the inspection at the supermarket in Guadalupe, Makati City, where monitoring teams checked the prices and supply of basic necessities and prime commodities, particularly candles and bottled water, which are two of the most purchased items during the observance of Undas, or All Saints Day and All Souls Day. All 224 stock-keeping units of monitored items were found within the agency's adjusted retail price list. Roque said the activity reinforces the agency's commitment to maintain price stability, adding that retailers have agreed to keep their prices steady until the end of the year. Since early October, DTI monitoring teams have inspected 19 flower shops to check price compliance and encourage vendors to maintain reasonably priced products. As chairperson of the National Price Coordinating Council, Roque also joined Department of Agriculture DA Secretary Francisco Chulo Real Jr. in inspecting prices of rice, meat, fish, fruits, and vegetables in 10 public market stalls. The joint monitoring forms part of DTI and the DA's continuing efforts to stabilize prices and ensure adequate supply of basic commodities across the country. Throughout the year, the two agencies have conducted 23 joint monitoring activities nationwide to keep a close watch on price movements and implementing programs aimed at maintaining market stability.
Dateline Malacañang.
Public and private stakeholders have agreed on a closer tie-up to ensure adequate and stable power supply during the observance of Undas, All Saints Day and All Souls Day on November 1 and 2. The Department of Energy or DOE said in a statement that it is closely working with power generation companies, the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines or NGCP, distribution utilities and cooperatives to maintain uninterrupted power supply throughout the holiday period. The statement also said DOE is working with petroleum retailers to maintain adequate fuel inventories and ensure efficient operations at gasoline stations along major routes while actively monitoring fuel prices to protect consumers from unfair practices. It said owners of electric vehicles or EVs may also access around 1,223 charging points nationwide. It also said about 706 of these charging stations are in the National Capital Region or NCR, 268 are in the North and South Luzon, 221 in the Visayas, and 28 in Mindanao.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that is all for today's Dateline Malacañang for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This has been Bea Gaza-de Guzman.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila. Dateline Malacañang.